Hey everybody, Joseph Rothschild here, aka Mono Bluetron, back again with another episode of 10-Minute Testing. So for the last couple of weeks, we've been primarily exploring some of the upcoming Code of the Duelist and Sibber strategies, and now that the set is both released and legal, it's time for the payoff. Today we're re-examining what I believe is one of the most promising archetypes released in CODed, TRICKSTAR. So here's the list. Now, this deck shouldn't be a surprise to anyone familiar with my stream. It's really all I've been playing all week. I can feel you from the other side of the screen, shaking with a wad of sweaty disturbance strategies clutched in your little tight fists. But don't worry. As always, I'll give you a little bit of background about the archetype, a little bit of a discussion about what I hope the deck can do, and as always, the card by card. So firstly, TRICKSTAR are a deck that you're not going to see the end of anytime soon. They're a deck used by a new character on the Yu-Gi-Oh! Series Vrains, so it's likely we're going to see support trickle out a la Performapal for the next good while. Like Performapal, it's not really particularly clear what they're meant to do yet, but as of now, with 4 or 5 pieces of support, they're an incredibly consistent burn engine. Ooh. Doesn't that sentence just get your skin prickling? Their field spell adds a TRICKSTAR monster to hand. One of their monsters adds a TRICKSTAR card to hand. It's just unreal how hard it is to brick with this deck. Originally, people played the strategy as a combo deck that aimed to amass a critical amount of Wheel of Fortune effects, TRICKSTAR reincarnations, present cards, and disturbance strategies to burn your opponent out with Licorice activations, but I believe the cards are most potent in a WINDWITCH strategy. This deck's main strategy relies on the power of the individual TRICKSTAR cards by foregoing the redundant but unsearchable alternative copies of TRICKSTAR reincarnation in order to capitalize on 2 things that synergize very well with it: Chain Summoning and the WINDWITCHES. Since Candina's effect is not once per turn, and Licorice can recur her as many times as you want, with Chain Summoning, hands of Candina plus Licorice often become FTKs, killing your opponent the first time they attempt to draw. While on the draw, your opponent has a presumably smaller hand and a couple of pieces of interaction, so the WINDWITCHES deal the remaining 1,300 points of damage to your opponent, as well as creating a big, indestructible baddie to negate enemy Tridents. The deck's secondary strategy involves capitalizing on a cheesy combo between Droll and Lockbird and TRICKSTAR Reincarnation. If your opponent adds a card to hand, you can activate Reincarnation to the add and Lockbird to the Reincarnation, preventing your opponent from drawing after they banish all the cards in their hand. Each individual piece of this combo is also uniquely powerful, and sometimes you'll find yourself winning just by virtue of using Droll and Lockbird as intended against a true Draco player. So, on to the card by card. First, we've got 3 copies of Candina, the glue that holds this whole deck together. When normal summoned, this card lets you add any TRICKSTAR card from your deck to your hand, and every time your opponent uses a spell or trap card, they take the fatty 200 damage. After that is the best card in the deck, TRICKSTAR Licorice. This card deals 200 to your opponent every time they try to draw a card per card drawn, and can special itself by returning a TRICKSTAR monster other than itself to your hand. Fun fact, multiple Licorice can return off a single monster. Finally, we have 1 copy of Lilybell, which can attack directly, and when she does, snags a TRICKSTAR from grave. Next are hand traps, and Jesus, we've got a lot of them. No inside Mind Drain, by the way. It completely beats the hell out of us. We're playing 3 copies of Droll and Lockbird, which are part of the hand-stripping combo, and are just generally very good on their own. 2 copies of Ghost Ogre, another card that is generally good, and 2 copies of Honest. Now, TRICKSTAR is very good at stealing games as long as they can get maybe 1 or 2 1800 attack point attacks in, kind of like Zoo, and Honest ensures that they'll always be able to. Finally, we have our WINDWITCHES, the lowest amount I feel comfortable playing: 3 copies of Ice Spell, 2 copies of Glass Spell, and 1 copy of Snowbell. Since Ice Spell and Winter Bell also do damage to our opponent, they're a very easy way to get our OTK to change into an FTK and provide just a tiny amount of reach. After that are our Chain Summonings. I'm loaded all the way up. This card is absolutely bonkers, allowing you to normal summon up to 3 times in a single turn, usually the same Candina over and over again. Next are 2 copies of Contract with Dawn 1000, which makes both players lose 1,000 life points, very good for us, and draw a card. All the cards drawn are revealed, and if you can't get the spells out of your hand, then you can't normal or special summon. It gives us perfect information, lets us know what to play around, it burns, it gives us draws. It's basically all we could ask for, especially since getting out of its preventative condition triggers Candina. 3 copies of Terraforming to find our 3 light stage. This card is super interesting. It adds a TRICKSTAR to hand on activation, does 200 whenever we damage an opponent with a TRICKSTAR monster by battle or card effect, and can Zing Zen Hue an opponent's set, spell, or trap once per turn. Absolutely astounding. After that is a Ring of Destruction, secretly the best card in the deck. I mean, Lord, thank God this is not at 3. It edges out games very quickly. We are also playing 3 copies of Solemns, 3 copies of Trickstar Reincarnation, which banishes our opponent's hand and banishes itself from grave to special a Trickstar and does not make you wait a turn to do each different effect. And finally, 2 copies of Blazing Mirror Force to also edge out close games. In the extra, we've got a bunch of 7s. We have Ancient Fairy, we have Black Rose, as well as a bunch of Wind Witch stuff, Clearwing, Crystal Wing, Winterbell, and a goofy Chanbara. For links, we've got a Talker and 2 Holly Angel, which prevents your Trickstars from dying to opponent's card effects or battle. And then for Xyz, a copy of Nightmare Shark, a copy of Break Sword for 3s, and Cowboy, Emerald, and Tornado for 4s. With that, let's jump into the games. Our first match is up against Blue Eyes White Dragon, and I think it's only just that after I claim the deck doesn't brick very often in deck edit, I immediately get to show you what is effectively the biggest brick the deck can create. We have, of course, both halves of our Droll Unlock and Trickstar Reincarnation combo, which is very powerful on the play, but unfortunately we're going second. While it's still pretty good to banish 2 or 3 cards out of our opponent's hand, it's way less good if they have a Blue Eyes White Dragon on their side of the field that we have no earthly way of getting over. We have a Blazing for the first one, but if Blue Eyes is good at anything, it's making a second one in end step. Thankfully, our opponent has brick 2. They'll go ahead and set this copy of Ancient White Stone in this bottomless, pass it back. We draw Terraforming, one of the best draws remaining in our deck, but we had 9 shots to get Candina. We'll use Candina's effect to get a Licorice, set 2, and pass it back. Upon entering main phase, our opponent is going to trib over the Candina for a Gamciel, not allowing us to use Licorice's effect. Use Sage to get a Dragon Spirit of White, banishing our light stage, and then going into Blue Eyes. We'll go ahead and use Blazing Mirror Force to do 15 to him, just happy to get any damage we can. But of course, in end step, they'll get a second Blue Eyes White Dragon, and now the game is a little crusty. A Solemn Strike and a Trickstar Reincarnation are not going to defeat a Blue Eyes White Dragon. So we take 800 here, and our opponent immediately passes it back to us. We draw Chain Summoning, so now we might be able to make a little magic happen. We're going to use Trickstar Reincarnation, then use its Grave effect to get back Candina. Our opponent's going to bottomless the Candina. We'll use Licoricica's effect to return it to hand, then Chain Summoning as Chain Link 3. This allows us to normal summon 3 times this turn, so we get to use Candina's effect 3 times. We'll get a Licoricica, return it to hand with Licoricica's effect, normal summon, get a Light Stage, use Light Stage, get another Licoricica, return it to hand with Licoricica's effect, normal summon, use its effect to get a Reincarnation, and suddenly the game's basically over. Our opponent is going to take 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2 in draw step as they add 1 card to their hand, and then we'll immediately flip up our Reincarnation, happy to get 600 point beats in with our individual Licoricicas, 602, 602, 602. At this point, we're kind of daring our opponent to do anything. They're at a relatively low life total, and activating any spell or ability like they just do will cause them to take 400 damage from Candina. They're, of course, going to use the effect of Dragon Spirit of White. We will flip Solemn Strike to protect our own light stage. They're not particularly interested in it dying, so they banish their copy of Return of the Dragon Lords, then go immediately into Hope Harbinger, attacking over our Candina for 12. Then they add a copy of Blue Eyes White Dragon back to their hand, which causes them to take 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. Now, the game's basically over at this point. I think we could just pass it back and win, but I do want to get a little fancy. We draw into another card that burns them for lethal, but instead I want a Lilybell attack, cause him to use the effect of Hope Harbinger, then Ghost Ogre it for maximum BM. Alright, well that's enough trudging through the swamps of Tier 3 for one night. The real reason you play this deck is because it has a sweet True Draco matchup. Nothing better against the deck that draws 15 cards a turn than a deck that punishes you for drawing, and main deck Droll Unlock birds are sexy. Our opponent gets to go first, which is not ideal, but we do have a copy of Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit, which is good. They have a copy of Dragonic Diagram, a True Draco Heritage, and a True Draco itself, basically everything they could ever want. They're going to start by activating Dragonic Diagram and destroying the True King return that they have just set. They're going to get a copy of Disciples, then tribute it for Ignis Heat, activate Succession. We will immediately Ghost Ogre that. I don't want them drawing cards until I say so. On our turn, we'll go ahead and draw an Honest, which is really good. Use Trickstar Light Stage to get a copy of Licoricica. Use Candina's effect to get another copy of Licoricica. And I think this Honest should finagle us a lethal by doing 2,000 points of damage over. Even though we don't get to destroy Ignis Heat, we should be able to kill him with our copy of Ring of Destruction that we've set. Unfortunately, our opponent max sees on our first Licoricica, which means he's going to take 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2 once they've all been special summoned to the field, since all their effects trigger once they're already out. Ooh, not particularly wise. We're going to pass it back after that. Our opponent is going to draw, take a whole heap of damage. I mean, really, this chain management is just really, really annoying. Very powerful as well. We're going to activate Ring of Destruction, destroying Ignis Heat. They use Ignis Heat's effect to put onto the battlefield, learning, taking 2,400 points of damage, and now they're basically out of gas. Unfortunately, they have to use Dragonic Diagram to get a True Draco because they don't have one otherwise, and doing so causes them to take the remainder of their life points, all 1,200 of them. Our last match of the day is, of course, against Zoo, and while we've both opened very well, we finally finally get to go first. We have a pretty sweet opener as well. A copy of Trickstar Reincarnation means we can go all the way in on Lickoricicas, get a couple of them. We'll go ahead and activate this Terraforming to get ourselves a copy of Light Stage, then use Candina to get another Lickoricica, and Light Stage to get the third one. We'll set this Reincarnation and return this Candina to hand for all 3 copies of Lickoricica. I'm feeling pretty good about this game. Now, while all these 200 triggers are resolving, feel free to do whatever you want. Just wait around, twiddle your thumbs. 200, 200, 200, 200, 200, 200. And of course, we're going to follow up all these triggers by activating our copy of Trickstar Reincarnation, doing 1200, 200, 1200, 200, 1200, 200. Now, our opponent has some pretty interesting cards in their hand, including a Mind Control. They're going to start by normal summoning this Viper, going into Hammer Kong, going into Broadbull, adding another Viper to their hand, basically for the backup plays. Once you see what they intend to do, you'll understand why, even though they take a heaping amount of damage for doing so. They'll then go into Leica, use its effect to get back Hammer Kong, tribute Hammer Kong for enemy controller, activate Mind Control, and go into Decode Talker, an incredibly powerful play that immediately loses to Honest. So we're back with a deck. This deck is nuts. Even pending a ban list that doesn't do nearly enough to Zodiac and TD, I could still see this deck being a power player. There's 2 things I'd keep in mind though. First, it's possible that Windwitches aren't the right fit. I loved them, but they didn't show up in the on-screen games, and the off-screen games, they were good, but not great. Maybe Kaiju could take its place or something. Secondly, if this gets people to start siding Mind Drain, we are completely screwed, since most of our deck relies on hand activations. And with those 2 caveats in mind, I think this deck is poised to be a force to be reckoned with, ban list pending. So that's that. God, it took every fiber of my being not to start jamming in Just Desserts and Chain Strikes. If you want to see me play the decks I make on this show on stream, I'm on twitch.tv/monobluetron every Monday and Thursday from 10 to midnight Eastern Standard Time, links in the description. And if you have an idea for a certain deck or archetype you want me to play on a future episode of this show, let me know in the comment section below, and I will do my best to take a look. Otherwise, I'll see you Sunday.